Well, we're live now.
Yeah, I'm live. OreAni, the end of the summer season 2016 lineup. Yay!
The end of summer. All right. Favorite season.
Yeah. So summer was pretty fun. Summer was great for most of us. And
All right. Favorite season.
let's go ahead and introduce. Summer was pretty fun. Wait, give me a second. YouTube is playing. I'll hear my voice leak back. Okay, so introducing, we got Albert with us always.
Hello.
Jessica.
Hi.
Nick.
Yep.
And Sean.
Hey.
Of course, me. I'm always here. You guys stuck with me forever. And let's go ahead and get started. First on our list today is Mob 100. I actually always thought it was 100%, but I didn't. I just marathoned this all the way from episode 3 to the end just yesterday.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah. And I was surprised with it. I didn't know what to expect. I heard a post from Sean saying, "Oh my God, this one part sucks." And I was like, "What? What's going on? What happened?" And then it turned out to be okay.
Yeah, that's what I felt as well. Like there was a time when I was a little disappointed in the show because it started getting to this rhythm of like introducing even more powerful big bads and having these showdowns with the big bad, and like getting into One Punch Man territory. But eventually it recovered. Like I felt like that arc resolved in a pretty cool way. But man, overall it was at least very, very entertaining. Like Mob Psycho 100, it just grabs hold of your attention. It doesn't let go. And the quality of the production, just from an animation and a storyboarding and a storytelling standpoint, is very high. I guess my disappointment came from, like, at first the show was focused on Mob's school life and like his relationships with like school clubs and like people at school and all that kind of stuff. Like it applied like this animated dynamism, this cartooniness to what seemed to be like an adolescent drama anime. And I was initially very excited about that, but then eventually it became more about like Mob facing ever more powerful espers and sort of confronting them in a One Punch Man sort of way, where it turns out Mob is like way more powerful than everyone else, But like I said, I think that arc resolved well. Like when he has to go fight the supervillain team, like it wasn't devoid of interest, and the twists and turns of the ending were actually pretty interesting and satisfying.
Yeah, I was actually surprised with the ending. I almost thought it was going to go one way, and then it just totally changed. And at first I was a little disappointed because I wanted to see some, just craziness, but then it changed, and although it wasn't what I was expecting, it turned out to be really, really good and great.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty big improvement over One Punch Man. Where One Punch Man had like a pretty good shtick, but then Mob Psycho kind of takes it to the next level by putting it in a dramatic context and making it like a deeper meditation on like what it means to have this incredible talent, what it means, what I like that toward the end, like you really get tunnel visioned into like who's more powerful. It's like, will the strong rule over the weak? Is that the way it should be? And how is Mob going to escape this situation? Like, what's the way out? And then this adult character comes in and then sort of unravels the situation and sort of shows that everyone they're acting like children, and then sort of prompts Mob to come up with this really creative solution to the problem. So that was really cool. That like it kind of reflects adolescence in a sense, where your world and your worldview is so small, and you can only see things from one way. And it was interesting to see that contrast of like the adult coming into the situation, being like, "What the hell's going on here? Like, this is nuts. This is all wrong. I'm gonna show these kids."
Hmm. I think throughout the show, and it kind of really emphasized at the end, was about how almost all of these people were getting drunk with power except for Mob.
Hmm.
And it, what I found really fun was like it showed like what could have happened to Mob if he hadn't met the master, and how he resolves all these problems was just really unique and fun.
Yeah, because I guess that is the thing about all the villains that he faces, that those they are all people that he could become if he gives in to the kind of darker ramifications of him having this like incredible power.
Yeah, but I can't. What was the master's name? I forget.
Reagan.
Reagan. Yeah, I just love how his character. I mean, he kind of disappeared near the second half, and it was very low key. But I just love how how he gets by life through the way he manipulates and just using his super techniques, his massaging techniques for exorcism and everything like that. The humor with him was great, and by having him at the end resolve all these problems was just, it was funny to the max, I thought.
Yeah, Reagan is definitely the most charismatic character in that show. He's the most interesting. It's the most complex because he has so many contradictions. And even at first, like when you see the first episode of Mob Psycho 100, you're like, is this going to be a show about Reagan just manipulating Mob and trying to hide it like every episode? And absolutely not. It's absolutely not the case. And you start to see their relationship in different lights, where at first you think it's manipulative, but then you sort of realize that Reagan is kind of this father figure, or this guardian, I suppose, because like he's the only one who can give Mob guidance on how to use his power.
I think
And he's kind of like a moral compass for Mob.
I think they even made a big joke about that, where it shows this guy talking to Mob in his memories, giving him all this wise wisdom. And then when it shows Reagan, they're like, yeah, too bad it came from him.
Yeah. Yeah, he's full of contradictions. You think he's a con man, yet he is the moral anchor for Mob.
Yeah.
So I was kind of sad that you don't see too much of their relationship, like in the middle second half. But he does show up again, so that's good.
And they definitely left it open for another season, or at least for more content.
Yeah.
So what's the 100 refer to in the title?
Mob is trying to live his life as if he doesn't have these psychic powers at all. Like he thinks they're a hindrance. Or of course everyone around him thinks that like, oh my God, if I had those powers, I would rule the world, like Mob kind of has a complex about like there's this identity crisis, this constant identity crisis within Mob of like, how do I manage my relationship with my power? Where
do you mind if I think to me,
go ahead.
To me, when what the 100 meant was like whenever they showed it on the screen, it was a percentage due to the stress or the pressure he had on him. Mm-hmm. So the more stressful or the more pressure that was going on, or something he couldn't handle, that would go up and up and up until he reached that peak, which was 100, and then he would just kind of let all that stress, all that thing out. Even his brother, I think, at once said that he had to always watch out, always be careful to not put stress on him so that he wouldn't hit that peak.
It's like when his powers like just run berserk and out of his control and kind of take over and just start running rampant. So
Yeah,
Okay.
he becomes a creature of pure id, because otherwise he's trying to keep it bottled up inside. And that's why he's such like a stiff and quiet character normally. But then once the stress overwhelms him, then he becomes Psycho 100%. And the id comes out, but the interesting thing is that like it doesn't always come out in the same way. So every time he tops out at 100 and he transforms into the id, like he doesn't just become like this violent, like crazy, uncaring character. Actually, something different happens like every time. So that keeps the interest level up. He doesn't just go Super Saiyan or anything.
There was one thing though, I think in one episode where it, instead of a percentage, it gave question marks, and it seems it's only something that happens when he's unconscious. And
yeah, there was a time when he got knocked out, and then he went into like some weird psycho mode. But yeah, so like throughout the show, the things happen in a mob, whether something will just annoy Mob or someone's actually putting pressure on Mob, and you'll see the counter tick up. Like it'll show you that his stress level is now 49%, now it's 52%. So there's always this build up to the big 100.
Gotcha.
It's actually kind of also referenced in like the opening of the show where like there's this running counter like in the background of the music where they just start counting up from 1 till eventually 100 near the end of the song.
Yeah, it's in the lyrics.
But like they skip a bunch
cool.
of numbers along the way sometimes. Like I don't know if they do like a bunch of 30s or something.
Yeah, they skip a bunch of numbers. I wonder if they count all the way to 100 in the full version of the song. But it's so-called TV size editing. So
Right.
So I was looking out for that too. I was like, they don't actually count to 100, do they? And I was like really listening to the numbers. I'm like, oh, they skipped like 50 through 80 or something.
Yeah. There was actually kind of one thing that kind of peeved me off about the show. Though I mean, I like the show a lot. I'm not trying to find complaints. It was just they introduced a bit of comedy. Like whenever the family was like eating together, like Mob would be like trying to eat something, and his like spoon would like just twist in contortion and just break and stuff. And his family would be all like, "Oh, not another one." And that seemed to be like the only error of him handling his powers. Like they didn't introduce another point of comedy, like, oh, sometimes his powers like interfere in his life this way too. Like the dude just can't do this other task that because like his powers just mess with him or something. I was always just kind of wondering why it was like the spoon, like specifically.
I guess
why is that the one thing?
Because like bending the spoon is iconic, but yeah, you're right. Like it's inconsistent in that way because otherwise Mob is, provided he's not Psycho 100, like he is in total control of his powers. Like he's always using them or not using them deliberately. But when he's eating, you see the sight gag coming that like the spoon is coming up to his mouth and then the spoon bends and then the food just like falls out. I don't know. I always like that sight gag, but yeah.
And
I think just because it's an iconic thing, they use it.
Yeah.
Like people being able to bend spoons.
Right.
That's like even in the Matrix.
There is no spoon.
Yeah.
And his brother, who is really envious of Mob having those superpowers. You see him like locked in his room just trying to bend spoons for hours. He really wants that power.
The one gag that I thought that went on too long was the wig.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a gag where a side character loses his hair, but he's a character that's really concerned about his looks. So in the next episode, he just has like this towering wig that looks super ridiculous.
I thought it was just going to be for an episode or two, but wow.
Yeah, he has it for like 5 episodes. But then eventually, like, in battle, it gets sliced off, and then he has his normal hair again. Like, they cut down his wig. Yeah, it's good. It's definitely entertaining, and I haven't really mentioned the animation, but it's got to be mentioned. Just like how animated this show is. Like if you want to see animated character acting and characters who are defined as much by what they say as like how they are animated on screen. Like so much of their personality comes out through that as well. Because normally you only get that from like Kyoto Animation things that have like where the characterization is very much like animation driven. But here we get to see something that's way outside of KyoAni's style. Like KyoAni would never make something like Mob Psycho 100, and yet it has those qualities. So I was excited about Mob in that sense too. Like it's not just a show that has really good animation, but it uses that animation in an exciting way.
I I kind of also like the message that, like when it was bringing around all the big psychic characters, and you know, from Mob's perspective, repressing his powers all the time, he was like, without our powers, who are we? Like, you got to be something more than just your powers. And he was getting the lessons like that from Reagan, but I really liked how they resolved that arc with the or not arc, but that moment in time in animation where they were fighting over the club room, right? You had the one kind of like lazy goofing around club members trying to retain their club room, and you had like the one like bodybuilding society wanting to move in, and the whole resolution with like him opting for like self improvement, and he's this total like wimpy character, and you kind of see him like always with the bodybuilder guys, like just trying to like improve himself, like as though he wasn't trying to mess with his powers. He wasn't trying to, even though like almost every other character who's had the powers have got lost within themselves because of them. He was always just trying to be like a normal guy and improve himself otherwise, instead of worrying about what he could be doing with his powers. So like I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's funny that there's like this Esper club or the psychic club that's actually just like a goof off club, and you're like, oh, there's an anime premise right there. He's going to join that club, and then he totally doesn't. He's like, nope, fuck that. And joins the other club. So I liked how definitive that was, of a decision, and yet it plays into the identity crisis because he is still in denial of his powers. Like he wants to be able to live entirely without them, but he also wants to be like strong and attractive and charismatic. So he joins the bodybuilding club, even though he's totally not suited for it. I love like all the animation of him just like running, of like jogging with a club, and he's trailing behind, and he's like gasping and wheezing, and it's great stuff. I think Mob Psycho 100 is it takes some of the ideas of One Punch Man to the next level. So I would be much more interested in a Mob Psycho 100 second season than I am of the recently announced One Punch Man season 2. And I guess as an aside, we're not even sure like if that's going to have the same director, like One Punch Man season 2. So. Like the director was the reason like why it had so many like Sakuga animators, and you half of the reason you watch that show is for the animation. So if they make a One Punch Man season 2 without the animation, like what's that going to be? It's going to be boring, isn't it?
All right. Any other questions about the show? Or? I think it's
one of the best things that Bones has ever made. I think. So I'm not actually that fond of a lot of Bones shows. So it was really cool to see Mob Psycho 100 come out of that studio, and it wasn't like a lot of outsiders coming in like that. There was a lot of in-house stuff happening there. So it was cool to see those animators like be able to express themselves in this like sort of animation-centric context. This show that has like these really loose and these loose character designs that can be reinterpreted like so many ways. So it seemed like the animators just went to town, like coming up with their own ideas. Like in a visual sense, it was much more liberal than the usual Studio Bones thing, which I always feel is kind of like buttoned up and too clean, too clinical. Like there's a joy to the visual presentation of Mob Psycho 100. So it's a very special show from Studio Bones. That's all I wanted to say.
All right. So Mob 100, Mob Psycho actually 100.
Mm-hmm.
I highly recommend people watch it. It's a good show this season. Let's go ahead and go on to the next title, which is... Dun, 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 dun. Oh man, it's backwards on my side. What does it say? Tenkyo no Arni. Nijimaki Seirei Senki.
Or as it will be known in English, like Alderman on the Sky.
Yeah. So let's see here on the list. So I rated this pretty high. It was one of the other shows that I've watched. One of the only other shows I watched that I kept up with it almost every week, while the others kind of got backed up. And I really, really, really enjoyed this show. The pacing was done really well, and it was also had some very dark moments and very strong moments depicting what war really was like and how it differed from what they thought it was, especially from when they were training and how they were just playing or doing their war tactics and everything versus now this is an actual war. This is what's happening to us and how things actually work out there. And near the end, though, it got really crazy, I thought, and because of how it was a tactical battle and everyone, I found it really fun just trying to see how they're going to get through all the situations, how they would just make everything flow.
Who else watched that?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was asking who else watched it because I
I
did
did.
not watch any of it.
I saw like 3 episodes of it. I thought it was all right for what it was.
I've never really understood the waifu concept, and I never thought I'd ever pick someone as a waifu until I met Yatori. Oh my gosh, I have the biggest crush on her. She is so freaking awesome. She's the redhead in the picture there. She kicks ass and takes names. She gets the courtly stuff. She's just great. But I really like, and Nick or Tank talked about this a little bit, that they don't try and romanticize war at all. There is a scene where our hero goes in a tent and finds his soldiers trying to rape a woman, and he puts a stop to it. So they're very good at illustrating that the side that we're on is still made up of individuals who may not necessarily be good people and who may do terrible things in a time of war. And so there's no glamour. It's a very messy business, but it's one in which Ikuta thrives. He's incredibly gifted. And it becomes even more interesting when he meets his intellectual match, who's on the opposing side, and they kind of go head to head in this battle of wills. It's not one that I thought would be this good, but it really is. There's a lot going on here. The Empress, or the Princess, is a character, and unlike a lot of shows where she'd join your party and run around with you on the battlefield, she actually gets sent to a fort and has to cool her heels there for the last story arc because it's too dangerous to have the heir apparent run around on the battlefield. So the show's internal logic is pretty consistent with what would happen in reality too.
Yeah, and I did actually like their attention to tactics. I haven't seen a lot of wars, you know, the gun shooting over here and the cannons going off there, and the advancement, and this brought a whole new light to what you can do to the battlefield itself to gain an advantage. And although it's probably actually been done by rather intelligent people in, you know, the vast history of the world, I don't readily recall an anime where it was this attention to the there's a lot of impact, like, and as you said, there's when Ikita had to go against because Ikita wants to optimize strategy because he does not want to work hard, because he claims that he is like the laziest person around and he wants to work as efficiently as possible so he doesn't have to do a whole lot. And, you know, the personality on the opposing side as it is current is quite the opposite. You know, he is the go-getter. He wants to just do everything constantly as, like, maybe like as possible, just as optimally as possible, and never just, you know, stop going, to just kind of keep going from there. So it was really interesting, like, watching how they kind of figured out what one of the other person. There's a lot of the show has like its own sense of religion, and that we don't really have a clean sense of. You have opposing factions who all believe in at least different things, and there's like no one like master religion that a lot of the opposing factions of civilization seem to readily agree upon. Like, everyone pretty much has their own regional thing. And I was kind of interested where some of the countries would decide something is taboo. Like, they had something against airships for some reason. Like, you know, I guess you can go up into the sky because that's like the territory of God or something. I really don't know. It's like, why would putting yourself in a blimp conflict your religion? But so I kind of wish they explained like concepts like that a little bit more, so we would have a better understanding of the motivations of some characters, or why something is taboo, how much like that kind of all matter or ties in together or stuff. And you know, that was also readily referenced when Ikita had a fight off people who were like indigenous to the mountains. He was like, wait, they said the term holy war, and they're like, yeah, why? He's like, well, that's really not something that they believe in. Like, he's like, there's somebody behind the scenes here who probably gave them that term, who gave them this motivation, because that's not a word they would readily use. They've never used it before. It's not really a part of their belief system. So, you know, there's something afoot here. And it's like, I really wish they tried to delve into that a little bit more than just like pure strategy military stuff, because I think it would have brought a little bit better of an understanding to the table. But, you know, the show had a lot to do, so it would have probably made the pacing a little bit slower. It's just, you know, on my want list, not like something that I could fault them with. It's just, I need some, like, maybe commercialized like info cuts of the religion, like how like Attack on Titan did the what we currently know splash screen stuff.
So one thing I would want to add is that that I really liked was what was her name? Yatori
Yeah.
and Ikta. In the middle of this show, they give you a glimpse into their past and why they're so close with each other and how they can trust each other so much. And you see that also throughout the battles, that they place faith in each other and move according to each other to bring up the best outcome. And even at moments, Ikita is blamed for it, but he's moving in a way that benefits everyone because of that trust he has in her. But then not only do they show that they have this great trust, they also show that Yatori has this influence from her family, her teachings, her history, to the point where you know her character, you know what she's going to do. And they even mention one point, like, if you were ordered to do this one thing, would you do it? And you could tell her answer right away. And even Ikta knew the answer, even though it wasn't something he would want. They knew what they had to do and what they were going to have to do. So I like how they established those two characters very early. And even during the battles, it showed up a lot. And
they could have easily relied on the cliche of her being in love with him, but they're friends. They're very, very close friends. And the show often uses the images of them with their backs supporting one another as shorthand for their relationship and how they work.
And one thing that they often mention is that they work like each other's hands or something like that. Like he's the right hand for her, should be his left or something like that. But one thing that's always bugging me and one thing that's always pulling me is that, and they often refer to this one scene where he always comes back to meet her again, to pull her away from all that situation. And I find that interesting, but somehow he's gotten roped into all this, but I really want to see if he's going to keep on trying to pull her and try to get her out from this situation from war and everything.
I've only seen the first 3 episodes, but something that I have noticed about those characters is that, you know, the dude is like one of those boy geniuses, totally insufferable. He's gonna lecture everyone about how they're doing it all wrong, and then he's gonna do it right because he's a boy genius. But and we've seen those characters in anime before. I always find those characters to be like really pretentious, like the writers just getting off on like writing that kind of dialogue. But the interesting thing about Alderamin is that it kind of recognizes how flawed that character is. Like he's politically insensitive to an extreme degree. And I remember there being a scene where his best friend, the red-haired girl, was like, and she is politically sensitive. She knows like when to say the right thing or you know, when not to say certain things. And she always has to sort of rescue him, save him from himself. But there have been times when she's like, hey, look, if you say the wrong thing here, then I'm not going to save you from yourself. You're fucked.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought like that dynamic was kind of interesting. Like, does that continue? Like, do you think those characters have a satisfying character arc together, or you know, I haven't seen past episode 3, so.
As Tenku mentioned, you really need to watch I think it's a 2-episode little mini arc about their past.
Mm-hmm.
It will develop it and show it in a under the microscope. But yeah, she doesn't make excuses for him. She supports him until he becomes a douchebag, and then she's just, you're being an idiot. You're gonna get what's coming to you.
Yeah, like she backs off at more like conflicts personal to him that he may have like that he may have directly caused, but there are times when like there was like a really tough military order or a really harsh battle that, you know, people may have passed away had he made a different decision. And when sometimes like they try to pin it on him, like, well, it is your fault that this has happened, or something, she does usually put like a spin, like as they're presenting him like that, like with damning evidence that this is your fault, you are to blame. You know, she kind of comes in and counters a counter perspective that at least kind of balances the table to some extent. Like, well, you can blame it on him, but all these factors were caused by this and not necessarily his fault alone. And I mean, she doesn't necessarily save him, but she also provides the counter opinion that usually mitigates a situation enough to be recognized as just the harshness of reality or something.
Right.
And for Ikta, his smug attitude does continue on quite a bit, but he does have moments where he says something that's very strange, or says something that you kind of would expect from him, but not expect it from his position. So like he told his friend Matthew that, hey, you're gonna I'm leaving everything to you. You're gonna be in command. I need you to do this. And he's like, but I won't be able to do anything. And he's like, yep, you won't. But then he tells him, you know, I don't really expect much, but I only want one thing, for you guys to live. Do not fight to the last man. Do not stay here and throw your lives. Live, survive. That's all I want. And even at other times he's with his friends, rather than just telling them the answer, he helps them kind of through it. And so while he still does have that attitude, he kind of does every once in a while help his friends try to evolve.
And he's also not above debasing himself if it's going to result in the outcome that he wants. Let's talk about how he convinced the natives to join their cause. Mm-hmm. So the military is at the Kyoka military, that's what Ikta belongs to, was mounting this campaign to subdue the native tribes in the mountains. And stuff happens. Third military power comes in and begins to attack the Kyoka Empire. And so Ikta says, this is the time when we need to fight together with the natives, because they know the terrain. It'll be an additional bit of manpower, which we desperately need. So the question is how to get these people to agree to an alliance when they've been subjugated and brutalized by the empire. Well, Ikta knows that in their culture, one way to ask for forgiveness is to cut off the first knuckle of your pinky to show your sincerity. So he meets with the leader of the natives and chops off the first part of his pinky. And then he says, well, that's probably not enough to convince you, so he chops off the next segment. And then he does it a third time. So he's willing to really take one for the team when necessary. And his sincerity was accepted by the native girl, and she does end up becoming an ally because of what he did. And so he may be a flawed character who is unlikable, but at the same time, I have to respect someone who's that dedicated to a cause.
Yeah, yeah. The character himself. Am I getting some feedback? Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
The character himself is you know, I kind of like him because he had this one teacher, right? And his teacher kind of invented the term, as he calls it, science, and it's more along the lines of not.
Oh my God!
Not
yeah.
like. And other stuff like that's what the teacher
science.
Absolutely messes with. Like he's making ice cream and he's doing all sorts of stuff, but Ikita takes it also into the sense of just kind of politics, logical thinking. He calls it, and like thinking itself has to be logical. And you know, aside from the whole like respecting their views as he was like doing the thing that they had in their stories and folklore to try to like be as an apology and to show that understanding of their logic, even though it might not be the most logical thing around. He knew that's what had to happen to make this all work quickly, because he even told them as it was going on, look, we're probably fighting each other because the enemy pitted us against each other, and it's their plan to now swoop in and pick us both off now that we fought each other. Like, they pitted us against each other to bring down our numbers, and now they're going to come in and take us both out. So you can let this happen, or we can try to, live. And that's what I thought was interesting, because I mean, I don't know, like, they didn't really get into his concept of logical thinking as he was, chopping off the parts of his hand. But I do kind of like whenever he would listen to orders and stuff, and then just start talking about that. Like, no, you shouldn't do that because of this reason. Or, like, he didn't really care for the one general who had, like, no understanding. Like, the generals were gung-ho, march up into the mountains, get this war done, and come back. And the generals didn't understand, like, and he was even appalled by this. He's like, they don't understand. You just can't push people up into the mountains. Like, that does not work. You have to get accumulated to the atmosphere of the mountains. So, like, his crew kind of survived because he took the time needed to adapt people to the higher altitude. And he couldn't do that for the whole army because he wasn't in, like, that much of a position of power. But he saw that all coming, and he couldn't do anything about it. But it's just, he is not the type of general just to march people and expect results. And that's what I've always liked, at least about this show. Like, not just go up there, get this done, and come back, and we're going to go on to our next campaign. Wait, what? We're having troubles? Why? You guys should have been able to do this.
So that moment you just talked about, the thing I liked most about that was, even though he had the logical thinking, he knew the right answer, or he knew the right thing to do, it still resulted in an outcome that he didn't want. And even though he knows that this is the way it should have been done, it's not going to give him the results.
I totally forgot that his tirades would, like, he called his style of thinking science. Like, that is the most insufferably pretentious thing I've ever heard. And, like, I hope that was a deliberate aspect of his character.
No, it was, like I said, his teacher was actually, like, the actual Einstein of his time. Like, he was messing with chemistry. He used, like, rock salt to actually make ice cream. He invented, like, the air rifle, kind of like back how when we had that Mao TV animation series, like, the demon princess character was, like, making all these technologies that we recognize, like, pushed society forward, like the printing press and all that stuff. So his teacher centrically was making a lot of prominent and just like even like the desserty ice cream thing. So his teacher was actually kind of messing with chemistry, making notes, and like analyzing the physics of the worlds to make things come together. But Ikita took that level of thinking and just calls it, like, logical, and to him that's how he explains it to people. But, like,
yeah, but, like, logical thinking is not science.
Right.
Is a process. Like, the way he defines science, that's not science.
Right.
So that's why I'm saying it's totally pretentious. I hope that was deliberate on part of the show. It's like, we're gonna make him talk about science in this really pretentious way, as just a way to depict, like, how he's trying to sway everyone with logical thinking. But, in the real world, you can't sway everyone with logical thinking. Like, sometimes you have to make an emotional appeal. So that's interesting to hear about how he cut off his pinking finger, because, that's an emotional appeal.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a logical appeal.
Mm-hmm. But one thing I really liked about the show, which I didn't see too much, while it did show the hierarchy of the military and how the chain of command was, it didn't get too much into politics. It was all really about war.
Mm-hmm.
So you won't hear them sitting around the table discussing, well, we should do this, this will benefit the country this way, or anything like that. It was more, everything's on the battlefield, this is how things are going, what should we do, here are your commands, and then if you don't like him, what are they going to do about it? And moving forward like that. But at the very, very end, the last episode, showed something I did not expect, and it's if you can get to that point, it really makes me wonder what the next season's going to be or how they're going to continue this.
I don't know. This is Studio Madhouse here. The infamous, like, one season only studio.
What did you think, Jessica, about the ending and how they?
I want to see more. That's the only bad thing I can really say about this series is that there isn't a second season greenlit yet. It certainly has piqued my interest, and if they don't do more, I'm going to be very sad.
Is the ending satisfying, or is it just a cliffhanger, or what?
It's not a cliffhanger, but it certainly alludes to more because the princess gives Ikta a command that he has to follow through, and that's kind of where they leave it. So it resolves the current story arc and wraps it up in a neat little bow, and then the princess comes along and gives this order.
So it gives you a teaser of the next adventure, and then it ends.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I don't know. To me, it seemed like there was something very, very strange. Like it might pit Yatori against Ikta.
I didn't really get that, but I'll watch it again and see if I missed it. I didn't really pick up on that at all.
I don't know. Maybe I'll have to rewatch it again. But there was just something about it that was like, but definitely. I'm going to buy what I can so we can get another season. Let's show those sales, people. All right, let's go to the next title. Then one title that surprised me, maybe a few others, which was ReZero, which was a continuation from last season, now finally ended and concluded. And I honestly was ready to give this up, I think around episode 13, 14 or something like that, when Subaru was his big asshole, just his whole yell outburst, and I was like, this show's done. But I have to say, I'm really glad I continued on, and there was a few episodes that were the main or big turning points for me, but I'd like to hear from you guys first, or let's hear from Albert since he hasn't been.
Sure. So, continuing on from last season, it's one of those I think it ends up being a divisive anime. I mean, people either really like it or really hate it. And it seems that way and I understand both sides, right? For me, I enjoy it because it's kind of a deconstruction of the normal trope, summon to a different world. And usually the protagonist has some sort of special thing, and he does, but overall he's not physically better than anyone else. He's not smarter than anyone else. He just has this one ability that lets him do things over. But to get to that point, he suffers, and he suffers a lot. So and it's almost like overlaying a layer of horror on top of this trope of, hey, I'm in this cool new world and there's magic and stuff. So that's kind of why I picked it up initially, and I kept watching it because it was interesting. Subaru as the main protagonist is not someone that you actually want to be, because he's kind of annoying. He's not just kind of. He is annoying. He's a little weird. He's offbeat. He says he can't shut up when he should, and all of that. He is a main character full of faults, and I find that kind of refreshing. Where, yeah, he is sometimes a complete asshole and has to own up to it. So. This season, this core, actually, there are several highlights. One, I thought separate from the main story was the backstory that they introduced of Wilhelm von Astria and his wife Theresia, right? And I think that was actually a side story in the light novel series. But regardless, I thought that entire backstory and romance was really well done. I really enjoyed it and added a lot of depth of character to, who you first see as a butler. So, and then there's obviously, episode 18 where they cut out almost everything, the OP, the ED, and everything most of it takes place in a single location with two characters just talking and talking and talking and bearing their souls. So I think it's far from perfect. There are a lot of problems with pacing. There's a lot of problems with how certain characters are treated. But despite all that, I thoroughly enjoyed ReZero and would highly recommend it to anyone.
With a lot of these shows where someone goes to another world, they're meant to be a stand-in for the viewer. And as such, they, like Albert said, they either have a superpower or they can use their knowledge of our modern world to advance the primitive medieval society that they found themselves into. But with Subaru, you don't, and Albert said this too, you don't want to be him because he's cursed, he suffers. He has a mental breakdown, twice? I think because of all of the horrors that he has seen and borne witness to. And so that in itself is refreshing, that it's just taking the different world spin, or it's taking the different world idea and putting a different spin on it. And the fact that they could have an entire 23-minute episode devoted to a conversation about relationships and that it wasn't boring is just a testament to the writing and the direction of the series. It's really good. This show should not be underestimated.
So, the one thing that really got me is that I think Nick knows about this, but I like shows that have a lot of despair and just when a character, everything just goes bad with them, and they had a lot of stuff like that. So episode 15, when you see them in that situation, her dragging her, oh man, that just the show brought these emotions and these moments in me that was like, holy cow, I can't believe what's going on. And
yeah, there's so much gravitas in this show.
And because of that, that's what pulled me into this. It made me feel a lot of things when I was watching the show. Even during that whole conversation you're talking about, it was just amazing. And the coloring, the lighting they did, and how they did it, it was just, and the music they put into it was just great for that one moment. But they gave you a lot of characters that you really, really love to hate, I guess you could say. And
when it came to this show, I was always interested in, our character has this gimmick that he calls Return to Death, or From Death, or whatever. Return to Death. And I always, I'm not sure if I hit a show up like it where he has to get into realms where you see these characterizations, you see these great moments, And sometimes it just goes back and undoes them all. And he's aware of like all the different timelines, the different ways he's tried something, and like some of the greatest moments he's had with people. But that's almost like in another timeline at this point. So it's like that never happened on their end. And it was always tough to see him try to like, you know, just believe me. I don't know how I can explain this without sounding like a crazy person, but and to have his relationships reset as much as they did, and to know about his characters, like to get that knowledge from nowhere from their opinion. I was interested in how that, like the one time he would have a mental breakdown sometimes, but normally that was while he was trying to reach an outcome where a certain person didn't have to die or something. And I did kind of like how it cemented one of his most insane outbreaks. He just totally lost it in like this courtroom-esque case, and just like, I guess, embarrassed himself publicly and in the opinion of a lot of people. And when the next arc in which he had to, there's seemingly like against fate, there's just this enemy has been planning this attack for a while, and he's now just discovering it, and he's now caught up into it and has to think of a way to get out of it in only a matter of days. But it totally cemented that one view of his character into the eyes of many. And at that point, he was kind of having this breakdown. He knew that, you know, coming from another world, and acknowledging like a lot of the magics and skills that exist in this world, he didn't have any of that. He's just like a normal person. He's all, what can I do? And through his repeatings of events and revealing new information, and how he has to like present and convince people to act in accordance with what he knows is going to happen in the future, like ends up being his strength, but he can't tell people about it. And it's just kind of interesting watching him kind of like flub one particular timeline, but then he's like, oh, the enemy's here and they're going to do this. Well, what if I try this? Nope, they still got a plan for that. And how he just ends up being like this charismatic driving force of, by the end, the people are following him. They're like, you know, you don't have much faith in yourself, what we can see, but you've just like, you've done these great things and you don't even acknowledge it because you believe you didn't have the power to do it yourself. Like, put these forces in motion. It's kind of your skill. You know, you might not have, like, you know, had the magic to blow against the enemy, but it was always, it's like, I don't know.
Well, about the outburst is that it's part of the queen selection, and so various things happen, and because Amelia's a half-elf, there's a lot of racial prejudice against her. And so Subaru pipes up during this very solemn ceremony and calls them out on it, and when the knights tell him to be quiet, he disparages them and insults them. Well, you know, you guys are stupid knights. I could totally kick all of your asses, and just, you know, runs his mouth. Well, one of the knights, Julius, takes umbrage at this, and rightly so, and challenges him to a duel and just cleans his clock, absolutely knocks the shit out of Subaru. And so later on, after lots and lots of restarts, Subaru comes to realize that the only way this plan is going to work is if he gets Julius's help. And it shows the growth of his character, because the old Subaru would never want to work with this man at all, who humiliated him and embarrassed him so much. But the new Subaru knows that he hates Julius, but that he needs him. And so he's willing to at least be polite and work with this guy insofar as to accomplish their common goal. And so that was really cool to see this character begin to grow and become someone better than he was when he first started out.
Mm-hmm. And
So, one thing I wanted to say was, after that whole first, when he broke down and, you know, he got out of his daze and madness and he finally came back and decided he was going to move forward, he was going to protect. The thing I thought was hilarious, that everything you're expecting, he's already been through the birth from death, whatever, a few times, so he should know how to move things in the way he wants, but still everything didn't go the way he wanted, and he was actually used a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And even drove him more into that corner, I think, and that was just a great setup for that episode 18 that happened.
but yeah, it's just, it's like I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be like any more content coming from Race Zero. I don't know if there's going to be like the proverbial season 2, or because like it crammed a lot, like 26 episodes. It's pretty much a full run, and it coming from the series, but it's just with his power being to basically restart from like even a save point, you called it. He stumbles so much to learn kind of like so little, and I just wonder like how do people actually view him? Only because in the timeline he now exists, people are like he is this, not even like a genius like strategist or anything, because he simply knows, because he's restarted so many times, the right place to be at the right time, and he's like leading this army, and they're like, oh, this guy's accomplishing so much. But then, like, when is that going to fall flat? When does he not have to be this fate-forcing character? Like, I just like want to know more than the resolution of the anime, but I don't think that it'll ever like go out that far unless I like read the light novel or something. I don't know if does the light novel end where this one ends, or does it?
Yeah, what I was I think from what I've read is that all the light novels have been adapted that are out, but the web novel continues past this.
Yeah, so the story is continuing. Like what's published in collected form has all been adapted. So it's going to be a while, but I'm guessing that when the time comes, it will get adapted. It's super popular. People talk about it all the time. There's plenty of goods, figurines, lots of merchandise. So it probably will get a second season whenever there's enough content. But right now there isn't. And it will be interesting to see how things, what the next arc will provide, the trials and tribulations, as it may be. Because it gets pretty awful from what I know.
Like awful as in bad stuff happening, or awful as in the story goes down?
No, as in bad stuff happening, and like
No.
Nice.
Things, yeah, you would like it, but there are things that are set in motion and set up. There's clearly the favored of the witches, that are all named after the 7 deadly sins. And Subaru apparently being pride, and we have seen plenty of prideful behavior from him, right? So all the others are still out there. Beetlejuice isn't the only one, and so it becomes more of a reveal of what he's trying to find out about his situation and why he has this power. What's his connection with the witch? What's the witch's connection to Amelia? All of this.
That's actually one thing that I've been wondering about too, because it seems that more times he does his relive, or life and birth, whatever you want to call that, and also whenever he tries to emit the power to draw enemies towards him. At one point, I saw that it looked like she was whispering something to him. I was like, "What's?"
Yeah, that's also
in
the light novels. Each time, it seems like he's getting closer to her, like things are more clearer, or he can see more, or the duration seems to, for him, to last longer. And he, at first it was just like he's in some sort of dark place, but now he's able to actually discern not just the hands, but like kind of a humanoid shape and kind of her head, and he's heard her voice now, right? So yeah, there's definitely something going on that is not, I'm sure the author has an idea, but hasn't been explained yet.
Yeah. And there's I mean, they started the whole core, right, with the queen selection. So there's no way they're going to have to end it there. They're going to have to definitely continue on. But I don't think they'll be anytime soon.
Yeah, it'll be a while.
The only thing I don't want is what they've been doing recently is just making movies rather than a new series.
Yeah, I don't think so. But who knows?
I've only seen the double-length premiere of ReZero, and after that I was like, nope, fuck this, I'm out. But a friend of mine saw the entire show. I'm just going to paraphrase him, and then you can give me your reaction. But his summary of like that the show had like a subversive element to it, because at face value it's about this guy who goes to a foreign space, and it's kind of video gamey in the sense that when he dies, he comes back. So, he's got infinite lives. And kind of in a typical video game fashion, like you go there as a foreigner into this foreign space, and then you assert your values, and then everything kind of works out. Because, a lot of video games are like that, where you sort of assert your ego into a foreign space, and things just happen to work out because you're the main character and you're special. So in ReZero, he tries to do this a bunch of times, and he fails completely. And it's only when he realizes that he needs to, like, he has no standing in this world, he's a foreigner, he has to understand what all the other characters are about and what they're trying to do. He has to do things for them, he has to form relationships with them, he has to build trust with them. And only then can he have sway and, like, affect things in this world. So in some sense, it was subversive of, like, or critical of how these kinds of stories are normally approached. These Japanese guy goes to a fantasy land and tries to change things kind of story. That ReZero was like, no, you just can't assert your ego in this space and have it work out. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of like the iteration of, like, right after the whole selection thing is he learns that someone's in trouble. He tries to go save the day himself a couple different ways, and that fails for him. And ultimately, that's when he does start trying to motivate other characters. And as I said, he acknowledges that in this world of superpowers, he currently has none. So that's why I was wondering, where is it going to evolve from here? Because right now, as he rebirths a whole bunch of times, he gets the understanding that he didn't previously had. He gets that, like, second playthrough knowledge. And it's like, what is this character going to end up like? Like, assuming he's never going to get home or anything, who knows? When wars or battles are not happening that require him to immediately save the day, like where does that character go? Like, when he does not have the benefit of his live through one life, get knowledge, go back ability, like, what has he become now? How are other people going to perceive him when he's not, like, driving a victory for, hey, that battle is going to be really bad, like you're helping our world because you've dealt with this problem for us, and you're a really good guy and we like you and stuff. And it's like, when you take a break from that, like, what is your character now? What is your premise in this world? You are not any more powerful than you were before. When you're not trying to sway things, what are you?
He did mention that there were a lot of times where the main character was sort of being used or sort of being seen as a pawn, like he would just get randomly assassinated, like in some of his lives, or there would be times when Like there would be some big reveal. It's like, oh, I've been using you the whole time. You're an idiot. And that's how one of his lives would end.
I would say that Subaru is not the main character. That he is, in gaming terms, the NPC, and Amelia is the main character. Is that the world does not revolve around Subaru. He has very little effect on things. Things don't work out just because he is Subaru, which in a video game, that's the way it works. So it's definitely subversive in that you don't get this world handed to you on a silver platter. It doesn't matter that you came from a modern era or that you think that you can do something just because you're you. Is you have to actually relate to people. And sometimes even if you do that, it's not going to work out. When Amelia, who this is her world and she knows it better than you do, tells you to do something and you don't do it, that's going to piss her off. And it does. And so Subaru has to work with the fallout from that, is that he can't just go and do whatever he wants in this place and have it all work peachy keen. He has to take the other people's desires and wants and needs into account when he makes decisions. So I would definitely say that this is a deconstruction of the I travel to another fantasy world genre.
Yeah.
It's not empowering at all. Subaru is not empowered by going to this different world. He's just as helpless in this world as he was in the last one.
I'd say even more so because there is the presence of people who use swords really well and can fling icicles at you.
Well, at one point he even says that I was in my world and I did nothing.
Yeah.
That I just sat in my room and did nothing with my life. I wasted it.
The only people he does relate to and does teach anything are the kids. the early morning exercises and stuff like that. But other than that, he has no influence.
But like one thing I always just kind of also liked in this show is aside from the whole mechanics at play, is the general witty bantiness of the characters. Like, you know, Subaru comes from, you know, modern Japan, so he's all on a little bit of the up and up on the gaming and anime terms. So he kind of has that angle that he comments on that no one else understands. And, you know, characters don't just kind of blandly say things. Like, everything's kind of, like, dressed up. Like the dialogue, like with the twins early off and whatnot, it's just the most, like, zaniest things at times are said. And it's just... It's not like just like, how's your day going? Oh, great, thanks for asking why. It's just the general banter of the show has always been something that has at least entertained me more so than a lot like other, like, you know, slice of life-y shows. So.
All right. Let's go to the next title then, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Next we have Tales of Zestiria, the X.
Oh,
Or is it the X? I'm sorry. It looks like Nick's the only one that's seen all of it. I tried to watch all of it, but I think I fell behind just maybe 1 or 2 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, it's a pretty show. It looks nice. It's really good, but I don't know. There's just something that bothers me about it. I don't know if it's the pacing or something about like that. Because like in the middle of it, right when they got to this, oh no, there's a dragon or something like that, it completely jumps into a whole nother story.
Yeah, like it goes into the side story of these characters who are somewhere else, and you know, I don't really know what that's all about. I know maybe those who have played the game probably understand it better, but it was really, huh?
Is that the part where they start advertising the next game in the series? I heard that was a thing that this anime did, that it started inserting characters from the next Tales game and pitching that.
I don't know what that was all about, because all I know is it broke away from our main cast of characters. You're on a whole nother place, like a prison island of sorts, and there's this character with this arm that can like morph into something and absorb like demonic things. I don't know if it has a connection to the Tales like game, like if it was completely abstract and if that was a whole nother game, or if those are characters who are under their own motivation, or we have to know about a little bit now because they're going to like come in correlation to the ending. Like we will intersect paths and have to deal with them at some point, so we're getting some understanding of them now, or if that was really just something unrelated. But it was definitely inserted like into this one random point where it's like, who are these new cast of completely unfamiliar characters? What are their circumstances? How does that relate to the rest of this anime? Like, at all?
Take a look at my screen and tell me if these characters look familiar.
Yeah, those are the insert characters from that.
Yeah, they're from Tales of Berseria, which is an upcoming game.
Yep.
Oh, okay. So yeah, they did that then.
And they're supposed to be, I think that game takes place 100 or something years before Tales of Zestiria. So their inclusion is rather mystifying.
Yeah, I don't know, but that threw me off big time, and it killed the pacing for the show for me. Cause
Yeah, like, they could have done that probably better. Or at least go into some explanation of like why we need to hear this now or something. But it was definitely like,
Well,
I
the
think
reason
it threw
why
a
you
lot
need to
of
hear
people
this
for-
now is because the game is out and you should go out and buy it. That's what the anime is really trying to convey there.
sure, I believe it. But yeah, I mean, there is already a confirmed second season for this show. So the first season is concluded. However, we've got a definitive. I mean, they did have a second season announcement, right? Like that was a thing. I thought. So yeah, it has maybe a prequel or something. I don't know, but I remember an announcement at like the second to last or concluding episode. So like aside from the point of that random inclusion of characters that was ill-explained or ill-purposed or whatever, I do got to say that it is a very visually striking show, and the characters are interesting. You have the Seraphs, you have the princess, who is not the main protagonist of the series, nor does she like necessarily include herself into the team of characters who are going about to save the world. They do go their separate paths a lot of times, and you do have the inclusion of that other red-headed character who makes her way into like the imaging of the series, and that she does get explained a little bit, her background, her motivations, her I don't know, her purpose in this series by the end of it, to quell the malevolence of the world, as they have called it. And it was kind of interesting because we have like yet another Seraph introduced with that character, and it's kind of funny because like she can't really perceive this guy but knows he's there. And that's like where the season kind of concludes. Like as they're about to start their next journey, now that a pivotal point in this plot line, they as they were going about purifying the world, there was a malevolence at play that kind of caused a big war between sides to happen, and it was something the princess was trying to mitigate politically, but like no one would have it. So she charges off to the battlefield to try to stop everybody from fighting. And our shepherd, our guy, should I just call him Shepherd or should I use his name? Sore. So Sore heads off to the battlefield as well, saying he can't take sides, but he can try to quell the fighting. And as he tries to quell the malevolence on the battlefield, the princess is trying to get the political decease of battle to occur. And I mean, aside from like the really visually striking fight scene animation happening, it's a very interesting show to see how the malevolence is motivating the general society. Like, because there is this negative energy in the air, people will do bad things. You take care of the negative energy, people stop doing bad things. And it doesn't propagate more malevolence. And I want to see them use that as a mechanic a lot more than they've been able to, because we were just being introduced to that in this first season story. We were starting to see our main character awaken to his shepherd fate, if you will. He's beginning to perceive the malevolence better. It's affecting him the way it does the Seraph. He doesn't have the power to quell certain types of malevolence yet. He's building powers. They're evolving. He's getting stronger. Being able to better skill with things. And I don't know what the second season's necessarily going to be like, but it's just something that I wish that we can see how the malevolence is affecting the world a lot more than the first season was able to depict, because we were being introduced to a lot of this stuff.
So one thing I do want to say about the malevolence, which was when I actually started to get interested in it, was it always seemed to be monsters, beasts, and certain things like that. But by the end of it, the malevolence actually affects the human, and then Sora finally, or the shepherd finally, finds out what happens to him when he has to deal with humans that have changed due to malevolence and the toll it takes on him.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really interesting versus him just fighting monsters.
Right. So, with the conclusion of the first season, you've acknowledged who one of the big bad guys are. You know the existence of dragons, and like how they're like usually some seraph that has been lost to malevolence and accumulated so much that they are this legendary destructive being. And at one point,
Tenkan, there's a lot of like handling noise coming from your mic.
Sorry.
Anyway, at some point, our protagonist is motivated to, they say if you see a dragon, it has to be slain. You have to purify it, and just make it gone, basically. And it is of his motivation. One of the characters joining his team, Edna, the blonde, short-haired, usually carrying an umbrella, very confident in her own appearance, Earth Seraph, has a brother who has turned into who has been lost to malevolence and turned into a dragon, and it is a motivation of the main character to be able to revert that change, something that they say is, as they understand it now, impossible. Like, they say that there's no way for it to happen, but I guess who knows? We don't know everything in the world, so maybe we could get this to happen. And you have the appearance of what probably is like the end boss, this person who has like the most human malevolence ever. He just has this colossal image of himself behind him or something, and he has that fight with the main character where he tests his skill. He's probably the main villain of the whole thing, and he's like, get stronger, make things more interesting for me, don't die here, we'll fight later. One of those kind of cliche, just early, I guess, mid like final boss testing protagonist, instead of just outright trying to kill him right then and there kind of deals. And as that resolves, that battle, that test of the current shepherd's strength, is kind of where our first season concludes. So there's a lot more to be had. I just, perhaps, like Jessica, how far are you in your game? Have you got like beyond where the anime currently is, or?
Oh yeah, I beat it.
You beat it.
Yep.
So you know kind of all about like what I'm saying. Like, does it all conclude like there? Or...
No, that's about, I think, a third of the game, maybe.
Okay.
Or halfway through, potentially. So yeah, there's a lot more that goes on, and depending whether or not they animate the side quests or the extra content that was released as DLC, there could be quite a bit left.
I gotcha.
All right.
So are you going to go back and like watch some? You probably haven't watched the series at all, I'm guessing, like even just to see like levels of quality of animation or anything.
I watched the first episode, and the quality level is very, very high. But since I already know the story, it was pretty much a one-for-one adaptation, except for the Berseria characters showing up randomly.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't feel compelled to watch the show, because honestly, the story is one of the weaker ones in the Tales series.
Oh. Gotcha.
So I didn't like the story enough to want to play through it or watch it again.
I gotcha.
All right, if you want to see some really cool particles, lights, fights, this is your show.
I have seen maybe the first 5 episodes of it. So a friend of mine is a big Tales fan, so he kind of made me watch it. I don't know. I really wish UFO Table would do something other than just video game adaptation after video game adaptation. It's all they do. And this material is just like so beneath them. I mean, I'm sure Zestiria is a fine game, but
It's
like
okay.
but I feel like as a fantasy story, it doesn't stand on its own when you strip it of its like experiential video game nature, you know, because like video game worlds have game mechanics that you can sink your teeth into, like, but if you strip all that out, then it just feels like a hollow shell, and that's kind of how I felt about the world of Tales of Zestiria. It's this amalgamation of like Arthurian legend and Shintoist Shintoist ideas, and like I was never convinced that this world is a place where you can live and it functions and people live there, and like there's an economy and a power structure that makes sense. You know, where you have something like what was that thing from like 1 or 2 seasons ago? Like the kind of laid back but also grim fantasy anime. Grimgar. Like Grimgar went to extreme lengths to like depict how you would live in this place and what is the rhythm of life and what are the things that you're concerned about day to day. And like whereas Asteria felt like I was watching some sort of edit of the game where it's just all the cutscenes and then the boss battles and then here's another cutscene, here's another boss battle, and like it didn't gel for me like into a world that I could believe in.
Yeah, like
I think that's one of the problems with video game adaptations in general when it comes to adapting this material into an anime series.
like because all we pretty much know about like humanity currently is they're pretty plagued by the malevolence, and like you only see the cities when our protagonist is around to try to, you know, save the day, save the city, deal with the root of the problem, move on to the next city. I think it would be rather difficult to try to know the whole state of the world, other than the premise right now is it's pretty much on the verge of presumable destruction due to the abundance of malevolence. So like this is a pivotal time to go away with as much of the root of it as possible to or say.
Yeah, there's a framework there, but when is UFO like UFO Table just has like such incredible skill when it comes to anime productions. Like why? When are they going to have their like Uchiho-ten Kazoku? When are they going to have their Hyoka? Like when are they going to tackle material that like is up to their level? So I feel like video games are the lowest of the low.
I gotcha.
All right, thank you for that show. Let's go ahead and move on. But first, real quick, why are we talking about this show? This show is terrible.
Why are we talking about is this a Sunrise mecha anime? And
Which one is this?
I think this was the one where they're always in the bathhouse or taking a bath. They're fighting. I don't know. Nick put the number on this one.
Oh, I never saw this one.
What did you want to say about the show, Nick?
Nick, what the hell is this thing?
The number was just because I guess I didn't want it to be one. I don't know. I forgot what I put as my number one, but I think it's for whatever my one is. It's for a good reason. This is just something I wanted to bring up, and 4 was just my allotment at the time. So this show was that thing that was a cell phone game that they yet again made an anime of, and directly acknowledged the existence of the game class system of the cards. And we sarcastically kind of said that it was an animation that was mostly about kind of bathing, because almost literally every single episode until the last one always depicted the characters were bonding in some sort of a spa bath facility of the wherever they were at on Earth. Just okay, never mind. And even
What happened to Nick? Did he freeze?
plot of the story kind of had this 5 worlds and almost like a Magic the Gathering style. You have a bunch of colors and they all converge to Earth, and you are now able to transcend the borders from Earth to these other worlds and vice versa. And an enemy has shown up who is just basically there to take out society. And most of the point of the series, I guess, the game is supposed to be you fighting said enemy. I don't know if they animated an event or if they just came up with something, because I was never able to play the game because it's not available in any sort of way in English. But the plot at play in the animation was that the enemy has captured, I guess, either what's supposed to be the smartphone user side of the experience, because they have a thing called the alpha driver, and I don't know if that's a game element the player controls, or if each person playing the game would be referred to as the alpha driver. And as they to the characters who are the characters whose abilities you are growing and trying to fight this presence of the world enemy, the anime's plot was to take control of the alpha drivers and control of the characters that they were connected to, thus turning a lot of the high-level talent to the side of the enemy and really screwing over the Earth and the 4 other planes of existence. And that would all seem... Huh?
I said safe search is off, so it's only a matter of time until we get to some really good stuff.
I've seen plot lines from some certain, just cell phony app game things. And I was just more interested in the resolution. Are you animating an event? Did you kind of come up with this? What is your angle to make? Why are you bringing these characters into an animation? I know you're ultimately selling the game, but how are you going to do this? And your whole goal is to bring personality to characters that you might have only had a little flavor text for or something. So you have a lot of cookie cutter anime personalities present here because of the simplicity of it all. But I just wanted to see like what is the general plot line of a story that happens when you do something like this. And you know, this wasn't a premier example. It had very bland characters who were only motivated to basically play the rest of this event out to save, strive off the enemy, reclaim their captured, not brethren, because that's more of just a generalized anime thing, but, they wanted to get the people who are trying to save the world back on their side. They want to, their friends who have turned to darkness and who were thusly controlled by darkness, they need to, stop trying to destroy their respective worlds and once again just be on the side of a supposed humanity. And I mean, it was a plot line. There's not much to say. It was probably not like the highest rated show around ever at all, but it was something that I just checked out with because it's like it's definitely not like when we had, what was that other show before Grimgar that the Rage of Bahamut, Genesis, like that was a pretty premier example of trying to bring cards to life, introducing a point in time in some form, like, because I don't think the game ever really had like a story-driven explanation. And so the animators kind of took these characters and made this seemingly like majestic adventure story, and that was like the right way to do it. And this is just the example of how best not to do it.
So do they incorporate a lot of like game mechanics directly into the anime in this way that feels forced? Is it that kind of thing?
No, it's just combat. So you have the characters who have their you normally see them as a stale image. So now they're like using their beam sabers to swordplay fight the enemy. But the biggest thing was actually analyzing the bonds of these characters that probably never existed. Most of the premise of this show, when it wasn't trying to stop someone from destroying one of their respective worlds, was realizing that they had like no connection to each other. That, hey, originally we were just fighting and we were ignoring these bonds that we built, and now that they're taken from us, we see what we lack and we want to get them back. And that's pretty much the premise of the whole anime. Like, let's discover our lost bonds and use them to reclaim our darkness-turned friends and save our respective worlds. So you didn't really get... A lot of times those games, you just clash character cards against character cards. Like, you have highly leveled cards, you have stats, and you just send them off into, like, this mission thing. You get stats. If you're high enough level, you pass the mission thing, and you just keep on progressing that way. So it's very hard, I think, to make an anime of. So it was mostly... Instead of presenting the game itself, just doing some soppy story of bondy friendship stuff.
Okay.
But I did at least like that they try to do stuff like this, and I was interested to see how well they did, and it was just, like I said, just a yay friendship story instead of a well thought out adaptation of let's actually make a story from this content that exists. Like an actual, Mr. McBad guy, characters matter, people are motivated for actual reasons other than darkness is causing me to be all angsty.
All right. Let's go ahead and move on to the next time.
Would you say it's rather perfunctory as an adaptation?
Like
there's nothing special about this, right?
Right. Like again, because I can't have played the original, game side because it's all in Japanese, and I don't even think like the Android side of my phone would even let me try to install it. But
Yeah, I mean, just looking at it here on my screen, I don't know, it just seems kind of like garbage. But
Yeah, like normally an artist makes a card, and then it's your goal to spend money in the game to try to get like high level rare cards and to eventually raise them to a high level and just progress to like late level stuff. And
yeah,
it's like those characters are never really meant to be fleshed out. So what happens when you try to flesh them out? Well, we give them cookie cutter personalities. We show an improvised and because I don't know what's like canon to the actual series. Like, do these characters? Because I've played a lot of card games where, as you establish characters, like they actually have character level relationships. Like some games, it's like you can start like a little just mini chat session where you discover the history of how these two characters know each other. And I don't know if that actually existed in this game or if they just said, we'll make these characters that are apparent in this game know each other because like we need something to happen in this animation.
Yeah, so the lore of the original game is an unknown.
Yeah.
To
just
us anyway.
I can't play it.
Right.
So I don't know if they gave them cookie cutter personalities to promote that, or like, because a lot of times you just get your stale image, and the whole point is to make your card strong and just play the game, get in the leaderboards, be like a player that matters or something. If you want to sink like uber amounts of money into it.
Yep.
So it's like, I don't think the show sold the series that well. Like, it introduced you to some characters that probably wouldn't motivate you to go play the game anytime sooner. So it's just like, I kind of wondered where they were going with this one, and I'm still kind of lost. Like, but I think I would have a little more of an understanding if I actually knew anything about the original game that it was based off of. But I did like the presence of like the whole card rating system, like, commons wanting to be uncommons, uncommons wanting to go rare, and that whole system was present, and that initially pulled me in. It's like, oh hey, you guys are directly acknowledging that like card progressment system that I like so much. Weird. What else are you gonna do? Oh, nothing? Oh, okay. So.
All right. Fun. Let's go ahead and move on to Arslan Senki Fujin Rambu. The second season of this, right?
Is this the one that you were talking about like a few months ago, last hangout, saying that it's a super short season, maybe 8 episodes? How long is this?
Yeah, it is 8 episodes.
I think you're the only one that's seen it.
Am I? Oh,
no.
Well, it's kind of like a side quest almost, or kind of like, it's hard to describe. So in a nutshell, Arslan does all of this stuff to kind of carve out his own empire and retake the empire that was taken from him to get Ekbatana back. And his dad, the emperor, was imprisoned by the bad guys, and at the very beginning of the new season, he breaks free in a pretty cool set piece, makes his way back to where Arslan has consolidated his center of power, and says, Arslan, I accuse you of treason because only the Shah can lead the army, and I'm the Shah, and I'm still alive, so I banish you. It's just like, thanks, Dad, So Arslan and his plucky companions get banished, and they're told not to return until they get 50,000 men recruited for their army. And so they go to a seaside town, and the scale of the series is much smaller because it's completely contained within this one town versus across this sprawling empire of Pars that was taken from him. So it's kind of an odd switch if you watch the original show. I'm not saying it's bad, it's just different. The animation does dip in quality noticeably towards the end, which is kind of sad considering it's a short series anyway. But I found it to be pretty enjoyable, though I'm eager to see what happens next, and hopefully there will be another season. I haven't actually read the books that it's based on.
So does this feel like a side story or maybe an integral part of the journey?
It really does feel like a side story to me.
Kind of both. Well, like it's integral to the story, in my opinion, because with Arslan banished and having to do something for his dad, it explained his current new adventure or the standings in what he was came across as more of a side story of that beginning of that journey. So
it does move the plot forward. There's more going on politically. We get introduced to a couple of new characters who may turn the tide of things. Hilmus also gets a little mini arc, and he becomes more sympathetic than he was originally. So it's definitely required viewing if there's another season.
Which I'm kind of almost certain there will be, because this thing is like far from concluded, and it did pump this one out in quick succession to the ending of the last season, and it feels like the kickoff of the new adventure, but told with more side questy stuff. But I mean, if you like the first season, it's obviously it's obvious content if it's of a series you particularly want to follow. I don't... Oh, excuse me 1 second, guys. I have to mute.
Anything else, or?
There's not really a whole lot to say about it, except that I wish it had gotten a full core. There's also... With the original series, there was always a question of, can we do it? Can we actually pull a win from this battle where we're facing bad odds? But in this one, you never really feel like that. It's pretty much a slam dunk. You know that Arslan and his group are going to be victorious in the end. But again, it's not bad, and if you liked the first Arslan, you're going to like this one just because it's Arslan.
All right, I have a friend that's been watching this series. He keeps on telling me it's good. I still haven't picked it up.
The music is beautiful. I will say that much.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the music's gorgeous. It uses a lot of Middle Eastern instruments. I don't know the names of them, but it definitely adds flavor to the show. And the music in the first series was equally beautiful.
All right. Actually, I love music, so I'm going to have to check out the soundtrack. Let's go ahead and move on to the next title. This is actually a continuation from last season, right?
Yeah, it finally ended. The PA Works Kuro Mukuro.
So how many episodes was this?
I don't know, 20-something.
26, I think.
So was it good?
Yeah, I think on the whole it was good. As a 2-season show or 2-core or whatever, it has its ups and downs, but on the whole, I liked it. I tend not to watch mecha anime, especially longer ones, because I like my stereotype of the usual Sunrise mecha thing is just like incomprehensible. There's no grounding to it. It's just full of tropes and nonsense. Kuromukuro, like it comes from PA Works, and when you think about like the PA Works archetypical anime, you think of like, okay, small town, school life, and that's all in Kuromukuro, and it's able to give that genre some sort of grounding, where you know what they're fighting for, what the stakes are, what they're trying to achieve. Like, so it's not just like mecha gobbledygook for mecha fans. Like this is totally watchable stuff. and it does have, like I said, it has its moments. The beginning, the early part of the show has a lot of humor centered around like this samurai out of time. Like he just wakes up in the modern day and he has to learn all these modern world things. Like, you know, like the system of government is different. The castles are landmarks and not seats of government. And, you know, and he discovers curry and he loves it. And at one point in the show, he's like, after the war, I'm going to become a curry chef. But I think, yeah, I don't know. It's good. And I actually like the ending. Like the ending actually goes places, and and what they do at the end is that they have one of those like X number of years later, here's what all the characters are doing now. And, you know, I actually love those kind of endings, those montages. Kuromukuro has one of those, and therefore the ending is very cool.
So did he become a curry chef? Or?
You'll have to watch it.
You'll have to watch.
Now you got my interest. What do you think about it, Albert?
I liked it quite a bit too. I posted that. I guess Netflix picked the series up, although I was watching the Raws, so through methods. But yeah, I think I'm kind of surprised it don't get more wider distribution early on. Maybe it's because it's a mecha anime coming from PA Works. You know, it was kind of strange to people or whatever. But I thought from the get-go it was pretty interesting story and very focused on the characters. You know, the backstory itself, I think, is all original and is interesting in its own right. A lot of this core, the second season, you know, the number of mysteries, they were trying to reveal mysteries and then also trying to explain. And I'm not entirely sure some of the information dump, you know, the exposition that happened worked that well. But I can understand why they needed to do it that way. It just was not going to resolve without, you know, a mysterious character in the background stepping up and say, this is what actually happened. So that part, you know, I thought maybe they could have handled it in a different way. But compared to everything that you usually see in a mecha anime where things are just horrible plot dumps, you know, expositions right at the beginning and trying to establish the world. Instead, with Kuromukuro, you kind of gradually came to know, you know, the world. There was no dump at the beginning, and that was refreshing for a change. And then later on, you know, as tensions ramped up and the stakes got higher and higher and they realized what's actually happening, the characters, even though I disagreed with them, you know, you could understand why all these NPCs decide to behave in the way that they chose, you know, even if it's against your, you know, the main hero. So it had internal logical consistency, and I really enjoyed the character interactions and especially, you know, Kennosuke realizing things aren't what he initially thought, and then coming to even further realize it's even worse than he thought. You know, when there's a reveal, I think about halfway through the second core, where you know, some of the mysteries of the past is revealed. But yeah, overall, I would recommend this even to non-mecha fans because of all the characters, and yeah, you know, for once, like the cast of characters, you know, the blonde girl is actually blonde, who is from France, so that was kind of different. They're all international UN officials' kids in school. So
Yeah, and she's not just like French for novelty's sake. Like they actually use that as like part of her identity that she grapples with. Like, oh, I'm a foreigner and I have a responsibility to my country and not Japan.
Yeah, but she's more Japanese than the Japanese girl.
Yeah, she's really into that samurai ethos.
Yeah.
I think, like I was saying before, but as like a more concrete example of how the show has grounding compared to a lot of other mecha anime, is that like after like a pivotal battle or something, they will take an episode or two to sort of go through the ramifications of what just happened. And not just in like a tactical or strategic sense, but more like how are people's lives affected? And, you know, then it's like, oh, well, now it's too dangerous, so my parents are actually moving out, so I might have to move out too, and, you know, or things like that. You know, it lends a sense of gravity to what's happening, where it's not just like samurai robots fighting other samurai robots and which samurai robot is better. You know, there's a greater context to it that makes the show like enjoyable and also comprehensible. So in that way, it is approachable to like people other than just hardcore mecha fans. And you know, Netflix is not the ideal anime distribution platform, you know, because they're so hard about binge releases, but that's just not how anime is released. So that's definitely a problem with Netflix, but I can also see it doing okay, like on that platform, because it does have appeal to, I think, the uninitiated. You know, the samurai out of time aspect, you know, is a pretty good hook. And then, you know, how it details the rhythm of life in this place and how every event affects it. You know, that's pretty good too. So
yeah, so I hope more people, you know, eventually watch this and kind of pick it up. And I think there's potential, especially with Netflix's, you know, platform, and it kind of falls, you know, I think it would appeal more to, you know, the international audience, because it is kind of, you know, science fiction-y. It does have those elements without being too Japanese, right? And so,
yeah, and it's sort of playful with its foreign aspects, you know, with the samurai out of time, of course, but but also like the samurai robots, like it has that sort of like playfulness and silliness in a way that, like, that kind of thing does tend to play well with foreign audiences.
yeah, I think so.
So was this not on a streaming site until just now? And maybe that's why it wasn't so popular?
Netflix had the first half, like when like that core concluded, and then just recently Netflix put on the second half. So you binge watch it like per season. That's how it worked.
While it was airing, it was not.
Yeah, so we watched fan subs, or Albert watched the Raws.
I might have to give this another try then.
Yeah, give it a try.
I think
it's PA works. You know, the animation quality never really it stayed steady throughout. The mecha battles, which is CG based, takes a little getting used to. It just didn't quite blend in early on. I think they got better as the season went on.
I actually like the early battles, because you know, before the robots started like flying and shit, there was a lot of like samurai choreography that I thought was pretty cool for the mecha genre.
Yeah, I did kind of start strong with that. It was really nice how it kind of explored like the motivation of like the enemy too. Like it told its story in an interesting, like, not in an interesting way, but humanity just knew it was like being attacked, right? Like we are being attacked by this alien robot being thing for reasons we don't know. And I like how it kind of took the time to have our characters stumble through the reasoning of such. Like, you know, these these Martians who are just like sitting outside, or not from Mars, but these aliens who are just sitting just outside of our atmosphere. Like, they're not coming down and telling us exactly what they want. They're sending these robots down, and we're fighting off with the one robot that we have from us. And we only see things Japan side. They kind of try to talk about like what's going on in the rest of the world. But it just seemed like this really abstract thing where, why was communication so lacking? Like, but I do like how they slowly exposed the story, and how by the end of it all, it's not necessarily what you were thinking was like completely. Well, I mean,
It reminded me a bit of All Noah Zero, in that the enemy was like this superior, technologically superior force, and yet they had these like feudal values. So they were all about like honor and shit.
yeah, and kind of like learning the structure of that, and it almost kind of like hinted that there could be a continuation of the story. There was a lot of the one character, what was her name? Shira.
What, Yukina?
Yeah, Yukina, not the Shirahane. Yukina wanting to actually pilot the robot. Like, she knew she was like the second key needed to start this thing up, but she had her own personal gripes with getting into the battle fray, and and they kind of like made that one like pot shot reference to the Evangelion, like when she wasn't wanting to pilot the robot. Like, that was like a direct call off on the whole like Shinji thought process, I thought. But get in the damn robot.
Unfortunately, that doesn't go on for too long. That's just like an early series thing.
Yeah, and
So by the end, like her view is flipped all the way around. It's like, this samurai dude needs me,
right, and
or else he's gonna die.
And that was kind of like this thing where, after all is said and done, and they found out what the enemy wanted, they dealt with what the enemy wanted, and they proverbially saved the day for Earth for now. I was kind of surprised with how they started treating like a lot of the core elements that help save the Earth. Like, yeah, now that the Earth is saved, we are watching you guys because you are dangerous, and you're like imprisoned within our facility, and rights restricted again. And how that affects Kinosuke. Like, he's like, we've helped you people. Why are you doing this? Like, as his samurai mentality comes out yet again.
Yeah, but I didn't think it was too unbelievable, because what it came down to was like, how much risk are they willing to take on? And they were left with this choice of like, are we going to risk it and like take it to the enemy, or are we going to do the least risky thing and just so it was politically easier to go with the less risky option.
Well, yeah.
But all the main characters knew like what the real risk was, and that they had to do something to save the world.
And it just seems to me like, I don't know what PA Works intends to do, but they kind of were directly hinting that like there is a continuation here, either left to the wonderings of the viewers themselves, or if they're ever going to flesh it out in a second split, like maybe even 2-core series. But
yeah, maybe.
I'm not sure it did well enough to warrant a second season, and I really don't care. I mean, I think it ended just perfectly fine.
I got you.
Yeah,
I don't need everything explained to the very bitter end.
Oh.
I mean, the characters grew, and they followed what they believed was their own path, and circumstances kind of forced them apart. But it ended where they are. They have made a recommitment clearly. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, they wouldn't be sending it out. So,
I guess I was just trying to say that it felt unended to me, because they introduced like a new. I think if they wanted to like kind of like end it cleanly, like you just kind of like Sean said, you actually just saw the months afterward process of like where everyone was and how things were shaping up. But like, it seemed to want to hint that there's been a degrade with the standing of certain characters, like because they were kind of personally they seem to.
Well, I think they found their place because the show, you know, having a cast of teenagers is a coming of age drama, and the beginning of the series, all of them were looking for their place, like their calling,
Right.
and the end montage shows that they all found their place, whatever it is.
Even like the one like clone alien from space, the Mueta person, she found her place.
What was she doing?
She left. What are you talking about?
Well, she was that's the whole thing though. She was on the verge of leaving, but they didn't really flesh that. Oh well.
No, I think Albert's right. She actually left five. You know,
She was the
Yeah.
second person in the Black Relic.
Right.
Yeah. So
Because like Kenosuke didn't want to take along the one other, but well, I guess.
no, they both left to take the fight to the
What's going
aliens,
on?
whatever that
Yes.
entails.
I got you.
So
Is that
I
it?
thought in that sense it was satisfying. And if they make another season or series or whatever, if they make another one, I would be worried that they will have trouble finding like an appropriate grounding for it, because then they're having space adventures and then you're like knee deep in that mecha shit. Where at least in this series, Kuro Mukuro, there was a literal grounding. They were fighting on Earth in human society. They were going to school. You know, so there was all that context there. So I'm
Yeah.
always worried about like when a mecha show just goes off into space. I'm like, oh, there goes the grounding. So that's why I'm not dying for another Kuro Mukuro, because it might let go of the qualities that made this show good.
No, I just realized something. You guys are good. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I think overall, like, it's a solid show. I'm not going to say it's awesome or anything, but I enjoyed it. Especially as a PA Works show. Like, I feel like bringing mecha action into the PA Works story stuff, into the usual, like, coming of age, high school life drama thing that PA Works always does. Like, bringing mecha action into that's an improvement. Like, it spices it up. And then vice versa, PA Works brings the grounding that the mecha genre, like, almost always lacks. So I think that was a good marriage. Like, even though on paper you were like, wow, PA Works is going to make a mecha show? I don't know. You know, it's like, this could be terrible, but it actually turned out pretty good. It's like an improvement.
I think it turned out, better than expected
Yeah.
from my perspective, and because the last couple of PA Works really did not do well in my evaluation. Like Charlotte, right? Glass Lip, horrible. Nagiasu, also horrible second season. It's just they come up with some interesting things and they've fallen flat. And so I was watching this. Is it going to fail? And halfway through the first season, I'm like, nope, they are doing great. I'm gonna keep watching. So their next work will be Uchoten Kazoku 2, right? So hopefully the sales will also help. I don't know if that's true or not, but their Blu-ray sales will start this month for Kuromukuro. So hopefully they'll, get some more out of it.
Yeah. Or, hopefully they made a good deal with Netflix.
Yeah.
Because, like, foreign profits are becoming a larger slice of the overall profits of the anime industry. Like, that is an interesting trend that is real.
Agreed. It's still 80% is from domestic for them, or up. I think it might be slightly over 80, but they can't keep ignoring foreign markets anymore, especially with digital distribution, which they are way behind. So
yeah, and before you only had like in the streaming space, the overseas streaming. Like it used to just be these small niche players, Crunchyroll and Funimation, but now like Amazon is getting into the game. They have exclusivity with Noitamina. Netflix is getting into the game, so it's really interesting. Like the anime is moving up in the world of streaming.
All right. Is that it for today, or?
Oh, I also want to mention that like Kuro Mukuro comes from a weird director. I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but he did like Wolf's Rain, Darker Than Black, Sekai Seifuku. Like those are all kind of like weird shows that deliberately lack a sense of grounding. Like they feel like they take place in these like strange ephemeral worlds, that don't quite make sense. So I was kind of surprised that like Kuro Mukuro was the opposite of that. Like it was like for a mecha anime, thoroughly conceived, it had grounding. It was not like his usual anime.
Yeah, you're right. He's Tensai Okamura. He's been in the industry forever. Wow. Okay. Since the late 80s.
Yeah, he's an old timer, but lately he's been storyboarding a lot of episodes for PA Works. So now it seems like he was able to get his own show at PA Works. And hey, it was pretty good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and change this. Thank you for watching. Well, that's kind of off. That was our last title for this weekend. Of course, next weekend we'll cover the other titles that we weren't able to join or add to this discussion. Be sure to check out Anime Talk, which is a Google community, for the invite, and please let us know if you want to join in these talks. Also, just want to make a call out for October being referred to as Inktober. So get your pens out, get some artistic drawings out there. Hopefully you guys can try to draw something for our next hangout.
What is Inktober about? Is that like an internet-wide thing, or is that like a Google Plus thing? What is it?
Well, I've only seen it on Google Plus so far. So,
okay.
But I'm not everywhere, so I can't say for sure. I haven't checked. The only thing I check on Twitter is Kidia, so I don't know too much about anything else. But there's some really cool drawings out there right now. And maybe you guys can draw something from this season. Just do a little doodle, maybe. I think that would be fun just to add for the next hangout. Once again, Albert, Jessica, Nick, Sean, thank you. Everyone else that's been watching, thank you very much for joining us. And hopefully you can join us next weekend. And then be sure to check out your theater listings for Kizumonogatari. It's about 2 more weeks, and the second movie is going to be out there for you guys to watch.
Yeah, and what was it? Damn it, I keep forgetting the Japanese name, but Your Name, the Makoto Shinkai. Like, Funimation has some theatrical distribution rights to that, so they might announce time soon. So we have to keep an eye out for that one.
Cool.
Yeah, I think, what was it, Koi no Tachi? No, Kimi no Na. Wow, right?
Yeah.
Kimi no Nawa, and then, yeah, now that you said it wrong, I forgot what the real name is. Koi no Katachi or something. The new Kyoto Animation movie. Like, that's another one. I don't know if it's going to play in the United States or anything, but...
Also, there's that one OVA that played with the magical... that redhead girl or something like that.
Yeah, the Magus's Bride or something. That's on Crunchyroll. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I don't remember the title. Be sure to check it out. I've only read the manga. I'm gonna check out the anime for sure.
Well, you got plenty of time. I think the next episode is going to be like next spring.
And as always, be sure to check out Owen Evans, the artist for our backdrops. our backgrounds. And bye bye everyone. Oh, pick up your Nyampasu phone app so you can be Nyampasuing everywhere on the go. I found it. It's awesome.
Only you, Tank. Only you.
I'm sorry. Okay.
It's fine.
Bye bye everyone.
See ya.
Bye bye.